G'day folks, welcome to my beginner's guide for the Insta360 One X. This video is geared to those who have never used a 360 camera before. If you're already familiar with 360 cameras, you might want to go ahead and skip this video as there's probably nothing new for you in it. In this video, we're going to talk about the camera, how to use it, we're going to go over the menu system and the buttons and how everything works. We're going to dive into the software, the Insta360 One X app for your smartphone. That's where all the magic happens. So if you just got a brand new Insta360 One X over the holiday season, or you're planning on getting one, follow along. We'll take things slow, step by step, so let's get started. Now this video could be kind of long. You might want to break it down over a few sessions, that way you don't get overwhelmed. So let's go over all the components that come in the box when you get it. So inside the box, you're going to obviously get your camera. This is the Insta360 One X, and it is by far my favorite 360 consumer level camera so far. It does an amazing job. It's super easy to use. You might feel a little overwhelmed at first, but once you get onto it, it is the simplest camera to use. Editing the 360 footage is super easy. You'll be amazed at the content you can create using the camera and the complementary software. The next thing you get inside the package is a sleeve for your camera. It also has a neck strap. If you don't want to use the neck strap, this is just a button here and it can be removed. These sleeves are super important, and they're not like a traditional camera case. You have to be very careful with your 360 camera. As you can see, the lenses protrude quite a bit. You can never set it down on hard surfaces. These lenses can be scratched very easily, so whenever you're going to set it down or it's not in use, you just slide it into the pouch, and that's why they make these kind of open style pouches. It's easy to put in and it's easy to take out. The other nice thing about this style of case is it can be used easily when attached to a selfie stick. You can still slip it on and off when you have it attached to your pole. And we'll talk a little bit more about selfie sticks coming up. Inside the box, we're also going to get one battery. Inside the box, you're also going to get a micro USB charging and data cable. This is used to charge the camera, but this cable can also be used to hook it up to a traditional PC or laptop. You plug one end into the 360 camera and the other end into the computer. In addition, you're going to get these smaller data cables in the box. There's 3 of them, and they cover all the different types of connectors to a smartphone. We have USB-C for most newer Android phones, we have Lightning for iPads and iPhones, and we also have a micro USB for some older style phones. The USB-C connector can also be used to connect to the new iPad Pro 2018 that has a USB-C port. We use these cables to connect the Insta360 One X to our smartphone to transfer all the media that we've captured so we can edit it later on. We can also transfer content wirelessly, and we're going to cover that later on once we get into the software side of things. So before we can get any further, we need to insert the battery and charge it up. This little door at the side here is where the battery is stored. It just opens up like that. We then insert the battery with the power leads facing down, and it just slides in. You can purchase spare batteries on the Insta360 website or on Amazon. Now I recommend if you do plan on doing a lot of shooting with your Insta360 One X, it's a good idea to pick up a spare battery or 2 if you feel you're going to need it. So now the next step is to charge the camera. Now it does not come with a USB charger. However, most people have plenty of these kicking around. This one here is from an iPhone. You can use any USB charger that you have kicking around to charge up your Insta360 One X. All you do is you just plug it in like normal. Plug that end into the wall. And again, here's another example of why these cases are really handy. When we plug it in, so the camera is now going to be charging, we can leave it in the case, and that way it's still protected while we have it plugged in. So just leave it plugged in. It could take a while to charge. I'm going to leave mine charging and I'll be right back. So we're all charged up, so we can now remove the cable. So now we're ready to go. The camera's all charged, but the first thing we need to do before we can start filming with it is put some memory in it. At the bottom, you're going to notice a memory card slot, and that's where we insert the memory. Now you may or may not have got a memory card when you purchased your Insta360 One, depends what kind of promotions we're running at the time. Now buying memory for your Insta360 One can be very confusing. There's so much out there. These are the ones that I recommend, the ones that I like. I recommend with a 360 camera to use at least a 64 gigabyte card. The Insta360 One supports cards up to 128 gigabytes. If you do want to get a bigger card than what you have, I will leave some links down below to the memory that I like to use with my Insta360 One X. So to insert the memory, we're going to take the card, and this can be a little fiddly, so just use a little bit of patience. Sometimes they're hard to get in and even harder to get out. And basically what we're going to do is line up the text on the memory card to the text on the front of the Insta360 One X and just slide it in. You have to use your kind of fingernail corner of it to push it in. And you'll hear it click. Once it clicks, it'll stay inside. If it keeps kind of springing back out, just gently try and push it back in. Once it's clicked in, then it's in there securely. So now that we've got the battery charged, we've got the memory installed, we can now go ahead and power on the camera for the first time. What I'll do is I'll go over the menu system, the buttons, and then we'll go out and shoot our first little bit of content. So basically, this camera has a 2-button design. So in the middle here we have an LCD screen, and that displays the mode we're in. It gives us different information, and it allows us to set different parameters like change the resolution, different things like that. This larger button here is our shutter button. That's how we take videos and photos, but it also acts as an enter button when we're doing different things in the menu. The bottom button here is our power button. That's how we power on the camera and power it off, but it also acts as a way to change modes. So to power on the camera, we're going to do a long press until that light turns blue, and then it'll boot up. Now it might be kind of hard to see the screen here, but I'll try and do the best I can. So you can see the LCD screen. It's giving us some different information. On the left-hand side of the top, it shows us our battery level. On the right-hand side, it shows us our Wi-Fi. And if you notice there, it just went into standby mode. And basically that is when you don't use the camera for a little bit, it disables the buttons. So that way, if we go to press the shutter button, it won't accidentally take a photo when we don't want it to. To wake it back up, we just press a button, and it'll go back into the mode that we were previously in. At the bottom, you see a little icon of a camera. So that signifies we're in photo mode right now. Right above that is the resolution of the photos we're going to be taking, and you can see it's set at 18 megapixel. And above that is the amount of photos we have left remaining. So according to the memory card, we can take 5,509 photos. Now to switch to video mode, what we're going to do is press the power mode button at the bottom. And as you can see there, it now switches to video mode. The icon at the bottom has changed to a video camera. That way you know you're in video mode. And as you can see, the information displayed on the screen is different. It's now saying we have 30 minutes of record time left, and our resolution for video is 5.7K at 30 frames per second. If we hit the mode button again, it's going to take us to the settings. Now, no matter what mode you're in, there we're in photo mode, there we're in video mode, and there we're in settings. We can use the top button as the shutter button or an enter button. And I'll show you what I mean here. So I'm in photo mode right now. If I press the shutter button, it just took a photo. So now we can go over to video mode. And again, I can press the button and it's going to start recording. And you can see there on the screen, it gives you a counter of how long you've been recording for. Lastly, if we go over to the settings menu, when we press that button, it's just going to enter into the settings. You can see at the top how there's a camera and it's highlighted. That basically tells us what menu we're in. So right now, because the camera is highlighted, that means we're in the camera settings. If we hit the enter button again, that's going to go over to the video. So these are all the video settings we can change. If we go over again, that's all the Wi-Fi settings, and that's important because that's how we're going to connect it to our iPhone or iPad later on. If you click it again, it gives us some basic settings about the camera, different things like that. Now, I'm not going to go over every setting on this camera because that would take forever, but what I'm going to do is cover some of the most common ones that you might want to change as a new user. So let's go back to the photos, and we'll look at a setting in there that I think is very important that every new user should know about, and that is the timer. As you can see, the second setting down says timer, and it is off. Now, with 360 cameras, I think it's very important to set a timer because it gives you that time to get composed, especially if you have this on a tripod and you want to take a photo and get out of the picture because you want to take a nice 360 landscape photo. You know, a timer is very important. Also, if you have this on a selfie stick, because you're going to get a picture of yourself with the invisible selfie stick, you want to also set a timer so it gives you time to get the camera away from your body. So to change that, what we're going to do is select the mode button at the bottom. And that's going to cycle down until we get to timer. Then we're going to hit the enter button. And there we can keep hitting it until we get to the time we want. You can see we went from 3 second, 5 second. Now we're back to off. So for myself, I usually like about a 5 second timer, and that's what I'm going to leave it on. So now to exit out of there, we can scroll down until we hit done and then hit enter. That takes us back to the main settings. So now let's go over to the video settings. So this is where you can change all your video settings. We have our resolution. We can change our resolution. We can change our ISO. We can change our shutter speed. We can shoot in log mode, and that's more for advanced users, so we're going to leave that alone for now. But the one that you might be interested in changing from time to time is the resolution. Now, to get the best quality, you want to leave it at 5.7K at 30 frames per second. The only time you would really want to change that is if you want to shoot in slow motion, if you're going to slow down the footage. So if we click on it, you can see we can go 4K at 30 frames per second. We can go at 4K at 50 frames per second. And the next is 3K at 100 frames per second. That really allows you to slow it down even more. Now, personally, for new users, I just recommend leaving it at 5.7K at 30 frames per second. So that's basically the menu system, and it's actually fairly simple. Once you get onto it, it's actually really easy to pick up. So now at this point, you're ready to go out and shoot some content. And like I said, you just use your shutter button. That will stop and start recording or take a photo. And I just want to show you here, remember we set a timer for photos. I'll just show you what happens. You can see when we press the shutter button, it gives you a bit of a countdown. And then it takes the photo. So at this point now, before we get into the software side of things, you got to go out and shoot some content. And there's different ways you can do it. You can just hold it in your hand and walk around. The only problem with that is that you're going to have a very large hand in your photo, and it's going to look a little distorted. Most people like to use some kind of extension pole. First of all, with these 360 cameras, it gives you that really nice look that you have a floating camera out in front of you, because the way the software works is it deletes the extension pole so you don't see it. That's one of the beautiful things about a 360 camera, is that you can have it look like there's a floating camera when you're shooting video or taking photos. There are many different handles and extension poles that you can get. This is the one by Insta360, and it extends to a decent length, and you can use it just like that. You don't even have to have it out. That gives you enough distance from your hand that it's not going to look too distorted. It just simply screws into the bottom like that, and then you can extend it to whatever length you need. And like I said, once we're in the editing mode, this pole will be invisible in the videos and photos. So now that we've filmed some content, we're going to get into the editing part of it. We're going to launch the Insta360 One X app and do some editing. Now, a couple things to keep in mind about 360 cameras. There are two main ways to use them. Some people use them to film, to capture spherical video that you can then upload to things like YouTube and Facebook. You've probably seen them yourself. It's those ones that you can scroll around and get views from all different angles, and that's really cool. But there's another purpose that people are using 360 cameras for nowadays, and that is to punch out static traditional video from the spherical video. And that really is the beauty of 360 cameras, is that you can go out to the beach, say, shoot a scene. You don't have to point the camera at anything. It's going to capture everything around you. Later on, when you're at home and you're going to edit a video, you can then point the camera wherever the action is, whatever you want to film. You can make some really cool videos. You can also make those kind of tiny planet videos you've probably seen. So we're going to get our iPad out and we're going to connect the Insta360 One and start some editing. So now we've shot some content. Now we're going to get to the app side of things, and this is where the magic happens. The first thing you're going to need to do is download the Insta360 One app. You can do so by doing a search in the App Store for Insta360 One X. It should come up as the top listing. And you can see I already have mine downloaded right there. So there's two ways we can hook up our Insta360 One to our iPad or iPhone. So the first method, like I talked about earlier, is using the cable. So right now I have the USB-C version, and if you're using an iPhone, then you'll be wanting the Lightning version. If you're using an Android device, you would want a USB-C as well. So just pick the appropriate cable to the device you're going to be connecting to. So we're going to plug the micro USB into the camera, just like so. So now we've got it plugged in, we're going to set the camera down. It's a good practice just to slip it back in its case, because you don't want to accidentally forget and set it down and scratch your lens. So I'm going to plug the USB-C end into my iPad. Now what we're going to have to do is power on the camera. So we're just going to hold and press the power button. And right away you should notice the app come right up. And there we go. Now, if this is your first time using the app, it's going to give you a bit of a tour to follow along. So let's explore the app and see what we can do with it. At the end, then I'll come back and I'll show you how to set it up wirelessly. So this is the main screen here, and you can see there's some content that I shot. At the top here, you can see there's two sections, local and camera. Local is stuff that you've already transferred that is stored on the iPad. Camera is content that's still on the memory card inside the camera. When we've transferred content over and it's stored in our local, it's not in your camera roll yet. It's basically stored within the app. We have to edit it and then export it to our camera roll if we want to do so. And from there, there's three different sub-menus. You can see here we have photos, videos, and time lapses. So if I click on videos, it's going to give me a different variety of content. And again for time lapses, but I don't have any time lapses in there. So now I'm in photos, and from there we can actually open up our photos, and you can see we can preview them, we can spin around, and see all different things. Now, when it comes time to processing your content or editing it, there's two ways you can do it. You can leave it on the camera, edit it, and then export it, or you can transfer it over to your iDevice. If you have limited space on your tablet or phone, you might want to leave them on the memory card, but if you want them permanently stored on your iPad, then you want to transfer them over. Myself, I like to transfer them over just because that's what I'm accustomed to doing, but you can do whatever's comfortable for you. The other benefit to transferring them over is you can then unplug your camera, put it away, and you can edit whenever you want. You don't have to plug your camera in every time to edit the footage that you have. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how to transfer content over to the iPad to the local folder. So I'm going to use a video, for example, for transferring. This is the video actually that I used when I was showing you earlier how to record. So there's two ways we can transfer it. If we have multiple videos, like say we want to transfer everything here, instead of doing it one at a time, what we can do is click this button here at the top right-hand corner. That allows us to select all the different videos, and then we can click Save to App at the bottom. That will then transfer them to our local folder. The other way to do it, if you just have one video file that you want to transfer, if you go into the preview mode by clicking on it, you can preview it, you can trim it, and what we do now is just click on this little down arrow button, and you can see here it's now downloading. So now I'm back at local, and you can see there's the video we just transferred. So now we can unplug our camera, and as soon as you unplug it, it powers off. So now we can just do all our editing on our iPad or iPhone without having to have the camera hooked to it. So I'm just going to pick a video here and show you a few things. So here's a video I shot the other day, just me and my daughter going out for a walk. And you can see here what we talked about earlier, how when you shoot, it takes away the selfie stick. I had the camera on that selfie stick, and you can't see it. It just looks like there's a floating camera in front of us. So when I go to hit play here, you can see it looks really interesting. It's kind of cool that it can do that. So you can go around and check things out as it's playing. At this point, we can do several things. We can do some color correcting. We can trim it. We can make a hyperlapse. So the first thing we got to decide is the aspect ratio. Right now you can see the video is tall and skinny. That's called a 9:16. And you can see it tells us that right down the bottom left-hand corner there. A lot of people use them for Facebook and Instagram stories and stuff like that. The other aspect ratio we can pick is square, 1:1, and a lot of people again use that for Instagram or for Facebook. Now the next size down here is 16:9, and that's more of a traditional view. That's what you're going to see most of the time. So up at the top here we have a few buttons. The first button up here gives us a few options when editing. We can lock the direction, we can do a few different things, optimize stitching. For the most part, as a beginner, there's not a lot in there that you're going to want to play around with. Definitely some good tools in there, but we'll maybe leave that for a different tutorial. The next is our export button. Once we're done what we're wanting to do with it, we click on that, and that gives us all our export options. We can upload to the Insta360 One community, Facebook, YouTube, Google Street View. We can send a link to somebody, and with this one here, you can save it directly to your camera roll for later viewing. This button here is our edit button, all kinds of different editing things we can do, which we're going to get at next. And that just takes us back to the main gallery view. So we've got our aspect ratio. Let's do some editing here. So first off, there's some filters we can apply. You can do different things to give it different looks. The next is color adjusting. So if you like to adjust your own coloring, you can set the color temperature, contrast, all the different things that a normal traditional camera has that you can adjust. We can set the speed. If you want to make like a hyperlapse where things go really quickly, that's how we set the speed. We can actually slow it down by a quarter, by half. Then we can speed it up by 2 times, 4 times, 16 times, and 32 times, and 64 times. The next is trim. Trimming can be very important because you might have a 5-minute video, but you really only want maybe a 1-minute section out of that. We have the beginning point selected. It's in yellow. So what we're going to do is just drag the video until we want it to start. Like say we want that to be our starting point. Then we go to the end point, and we can, same thing, drag the footage back until we get to an end point. And then we hit the check mark up here to accept it. The next is multi-view. Multi-view is a really cool tool. What you can do is set different views. So right now it's in 360 mode. That means we can just spin it around. There's one view. If we click on it, it gives us a couple different options. So the first view here, it's kind of hard to see, but it basically gives us a little circle. And we can have one lens in here and the other lens there. The next is similar, but it gives us a bigger viewing area. It's kind of a long rounded rectangle. The next is split screen. You can see here we have 2 sides, so you could have one side of the camera there, the other side of the camera on that side, and then of course back to the 360. So let me just pick one here. Let's do this one for now, and let's accept that. we'll go back to the main screen. So we can set what angle we want. Have us walking on that little window there, and I've got the sky there. So when you play it, it now has two different views. And it works the same way no matter what view you picked, if you picked split screen or the little round circle. So it's definitely something fun to play around with. Now the last thing we can do in the editing mode is add some background music. So we can click on music, and it's got a few tracks that we can add to it. So we can click on each one and get a preview. And at this point we can select the mixing. If we keep the slider up at this end where the little music icon is, all you're going to hear in the video is music. If we turn it down, you're going to hear a little bit from the video, like if you're talking in the video, and the music is going to be more of a background effect. So now let's go back, and we can hit the check mark to confirm. So now let's play it. So you can see we have the music in the background, and you can still hear us. I don't know if you can hear it on the video there, but you can still hear us walking. And if we were doing any kind of commentary or anything, you would hear that as well. So now really at this point you need to decide, are you going to export your video as a 360-degree video that people can then look at any angle they want on a platform such as YouTube or Facebook, or do you want to export it as a fixed frame traditional 16:9 video? If you're going to export it as a 360 video, we're pretty well done, and all we're going to do now is go to the export button here at the top, and we're going to pick the platform we want to upload it to. Or if you want to save it to upload it manually later, or transfer it to a computer, you're going to save it to your camera roll. Other than that, you would just pick your platform and follow the instructions. Now just keep in mind, some of the editing features that I've shown you are only available when you're exporting as a fixed frame video. So now if you've decided you do want to export it as a traditional fixed frame 16:9 video, there's some other editing techniques that we can do here. So the first thing we can do is add pivot points, and basically that sets a mark on the video so the camera knows where to look. So for example, like say we want to start the video facing forward down this path, we would start and make a pivot point, and we do so by pressing down on the screen, and you can see that little menu pops up. From here we're going to select pivot point, and that now makes a mark. So when the video starts, it's going to be facing in that direction. So we can go through and scrub through the video, and say we come to this first bend, so maybe up until here that's where we want to go straight. I'm going to add another pivot point so the camera will keep pointing in that direction. So it'll stay straight from this pivot point up until we get to this new one we created right down here. And at any time we can click on one of those pivot points and see how it turns to an X, and we can delete it. But now at that pivot, from this pivot point to the next spot, maybe right about here, I want the camera to swing around. So now if we go back to the beginning, it should follow along the pivot points that we've made. It's going to go straight. And then at this point here, you can see that it's now starting to turn until it gets to this pivot point. So now, at this point, maybe I want it to swing around and face us. So now, you should see, yep, there it goes. It's going to swing around and face us. So you can go through your whole video and set different orientation. The other thing you can do by long pressing is smart tracking. For example, if I can find a spot in the video that we can track, say you film something and you want that person or an object, or say you're going for a drive and there's a building in the background, you can select that object and have the software track it. For example, I'm going to click on myself here and I'm going to put Smart Track. So it's locked on me, and you can see it's making a mark here. So no matter which way I go, if I turn around or run or whatever, the camera's always going to be facing on me. Now that's not too hard because I'm holding the camera, but say I had it locked on my daughter, if she walked this way, the camera would just follow her even though I'm still walking with the camera. So we can stop it once we don't want it tracked anymore. So now that just blends into our editing. At the beginning of the video we've got pivot points, but then later on in the video we have smart tracking. So these are all different ways to add movement to your camera. So the other editing option we have is called Viewfinder. So we can pick a spot in here, or we can do the entire video like this. So there's two ways to get at it. We can click down here in the bottom right hand corner, or again we can just long press on the screen and select Viewfinder at the top. So basically what we can do is we can move the iPad, and that will set the framing. And while we're doing that, we hold down the record button, and it's going to record that to the timeline. Now this is just a quick and dirty demonstration, but you can also have the benefit of going to a tiny planet just by sliding that way. So that's pretty handy. When we're done recording, we hit the check mark to confirm that everything is the way we want it. So that viewfinder capture is now in our timeline. So now we've made our traditional 16:9 video. We've added some pivot points. We've added some speed changes. We've done a few different things. Now we're ready to export. So we're going to click on the export button here at the top. And then again, we pick our platform. Personally, I always like to save to my camera roll first, but you can upload however you like. You can upload directly to Facebook or YouTube. It's just whatever you're comfortable doing. So if I save this to my camera roll, and this is kind of important, I forgot to mention it when we were talking about exporting as a 360 video. At this stage, you got to tell it if it's a fixed frame or you're uploading at 360. In the last step, if you were going to upload it as a 360 spherical video, you got to make sure you click on that button there, and then it will upload it as a 360 video. For this demonstration right now, I'm going to do it as a fixed frame. So I hit the check mark, and it'll go in and save it to my camera roll. Okay, so I showed you how to export a static 16:9 video, but what about if you want to get a little more creative and have a little fun? You've probably heard the term tiny planet videos or tiny planet photos, so let's take a look at that and how we can export and create our own tiny planet video. So I've got this clip here, and what I did is attach the Insta360 One X to the front of my car. Now before we get started, we need to pick our aspect ratio again, and by default it's 9:16 like they always come in as, and that's the tall and skinny. So we can change it to a 1:1, which is square. Now personally I prefer the square, and the only reason for me that's what I like is when we make a tiny planet photo or video, we're going to have the round kind of circular object in the middle, and that just gives it an even amount of negative space around it. But we could go to a traditional 16:9 as well. So to get it into the tiny planet mode, what we're going to do is shrink it down, and we just pinch. And as you pinch, you can see it goes right to a tiny planet. And there we can spin it around and do different things. So I'm going to orientate it like that, and we'll just give it a quick preview. And as you can see, it looks pretty cool like that. And there's a view of it if we did choose a 16:9. So either way does work well, so it's all personal preference at this point. So once you've done any editing and correcting you want to do, it's time to export it. Now when exporting a tiny planet like this, you cannot set pivot points. If you try to, it'll just tell you that free capture is not supported. So at this point, we're just going to set the orientation we want. Do I want the car at the bottom driving? Do I want it at the top? Or even from the side? The nice thing though, you can export it in one way. You can then come back in and export it from another angle, and that way you have a variety. So now that we're ready, we're going to click on the export button up at the top here. And we're just going to pick again how we want to export it to Facebook, YouTube. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to export it to my camera roll. So make sure you're on fixed frame and not 360 video, because when you're exporting as a tiny planet, you can't export it as a 360 spherical video. It's going to be a flat static video. Once we're ready, we hit the check mark. Now it's just going to go ahead and render it and save it to our camera roll. So we've taken a look at how to edit video. Let's take a look at some photos now. So here's one here. You can see there's the tripod in the middle. I had it attached to the selfie stick with a small tripod on the bottom. And the stick is invisible, but however, you can see the tripod. And there are different methods in third-party apps on which to get rid of the tripod. I'll maybe make a video, a tutorial on how to do that later on. So as you can see, just like the video, we can spin it around and check out different angles. Now at this point, you can do a little bit of editing. Basically, we have some filters that we can add if you so desire. Different ones. So down here at the bottom right hand side, we can change the view again. We can go to multi-view, just like we did with video. As you can see there, we can add a circle, kind of a long rectangle, and split view. Now when it comes to aspect ratio, if you want a square photo or a longer photo or a tall one, that is done in the next step when we're exporting, unlike video where you do it before you export. So when you're happy with everything, we're going to click this little button here at the top. That's kind of goes to the next step. From here, you can choose again where you want to upload it to. For myself, I always save it to my camera roll first, because that way then I can go and share it to multiple platforms if I wish. So we're going to click on album. Now at this point, we can choose if we want to share it as a 360 spherical photo. So just like a video, we can upload a 360 photo that people can kind of scroll around and check out different angles. or we can go to multi-view, and this is where we can set our aspect ratio and change a few different things. So first off, we can set our aspect ratio. Let's keep this one at a 1:1. You can manipulate things here too. Check out different viewing angles. You can go into tiny planet. You can zoom in a bit. You can go to inverted tiny planet. And this is where you're going to set your split view if you want. And you'll notice in photo mode, they actually have different split views. Here we have 3 different scenes we can add. And here we have a different one again. So it's got a spot for a tiny planet. And you can do a front and back view. So that's really kind of cool. So I'm just going to leave it like that for the sake of this video. If you're happy with it, hit the check mark. And it's going to create the picture in your photo album. So if I go to my camera roll, there's the photo that we just created. And at this point, we can now share it to whatever platform we want. So now if we decide to share this as a 360 photo, we just make sure a 360 photo is selected. And again, we can share it to our photo album as a 360 photo. And I'll show you what it looks like here. So here's the 360 photo that we just created. Now it's going to look a little odd because what the camera has done is flattened it and stretched it out. Now it won't become a 360 spherical photo until we upload it to a platform that supports 360 spherical photos, such as Facebook. Once we upload it to Facebook, it'll be a traditional 360 photo that we can move around and look at different angles. So yeah, that's kind of a basic overview of the Insta360 One X app. There's a lot more you can do with it, but for the sake of this tutorial for beginners, I'm just keeping things simple. I might make some more advanced tutorials coming up down the road. The best thing is just dive in and start playing. You're not going to wreck anything. Just have fun with it and be creative. Now before I go here, I just want to show you how to connect wirelessly to your Insta360 One X. Like I said, it's a great way to transfer content wirelessly if you don't want to have to bring a cable with you if you're out traveling. But it also allows you to use your device to give you a live preview and to use it like a remote control. So basically, we're going to power on the Insta360 One. So at this point, what we need to do is go to Settings, go to the Settings icon, and then we're going to hit Enter to select it. Now we want to scroll over to the wireless section. You can see there it has that little wireless antenna at the top. So make sure wireless is turned on. From there you can see it says Wi-Fi password. If you click on it, it'll tell you what the password is, which you need to write down. It's important to know what that is. Once you've verified that Wi-Fi is enabled and you have your password, now next you're going to go to your wireless settings, how you would normally connect to any kind of Wi-Fi device. And we're going to select the One X. At that point, you're going to enter your password. I've already entered my password, so it's not asking me. And now when we launch the Insta360 One X app, it gives us a live preview. So this is a really handy way to use it as a remote. You can stop and start recording, take a photo. So that's a really handy tool. And like I said, you can also go now and transfer your media wirelessly without having to physically plug it in. Well, folks, that is my beginner's guide to the Insta360 One X. Like I said, there's some more advanced things we can do with it, but we'll maybe save that for a more advanced tutorial down the road. It's a great little camera. You're going to love it. You're going to have a lot of fun with it. If you don't own one yet, I will leave some links down below where you can purchase it directly either via the Insta360 One website or from Amazon. Now, I just want to mention that my affiliate code will be embedded into the link. And if you do end up purchasing through my links, I do get a small percentage of the sale. It doesn't cost you anything extra, and if you enjoy my videos, it's a great way to support my channel without spending any extra money, and it's muchly appreciated. I'll also include some links to accessories for the Insta360 One X, a dual battery charger that comes in really handy if you have multiple batteries. They have something called an adventure case, and that way if you're going to be doing anything that could potentially damage your camera, it keeps it protected. If you're going to be doing any kind of stuff on the beach, you don't want to have any scratches on your lenses or anything like that. So I'll include the links for them down below, also to a couple selfie sticks that I really enjoy using. Well, folks, thanks a lot for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, if you found it had value. It helps YouTube and others know that this video is worthwhile to watch. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Thanks a lot. We'll see you in the next one.